Welcome to the So Much More podcast, where we talk with people in the custom window treatment, soft home furnishings industry, and so much more. I'm your host, Seal DeGuglielmo. My guest on the podcast today is Jess Kook Whiteley. She is the owner of Byrne Sewing Connection in New Britain, Pennsylvania, which is not too far from where I live. It's in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I've met Jess a number of times in the store, and she was an employee before she became the owner of the store. And we're going to talk all about that today, her background and what it's like to be running a brick and mortar store in this day and age when everyone's ordering everything off of the internet. I hope you enjoy hearing from Jess today. Jess, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
I am so excited. Thank you for having me.
Well, it took a little bit of courage to walk up to you in the store. I've spoken to you in your store a couple times, but this was an ask, and I don't always do that in person. But so that people know how I could possibly be walking up to you in a store, why don't you tell us a little bit, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of business you have.
Yeah, my name is Jess Kook Whiteley. I am a mom, a wife, and I'm also the owner of Byrne Sewing, a well-established quilting and sewing machine dealer here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So the company has been in business for over 40 years.
Is it that long?
Yeah, it's insane.
Oh, wow.
The Byrne family actually started this business themselves from the ground up, Mike and Debbie Byrne. And so I'd worked for them for a pretty long time before I had acquired the business at 26. So I've only had it for a couple of years now, but I am really enjoying it. And so that's how I got to meet you in person.
Okay. And I have mentioned Byrne Sewing Connection a couple of times. When I decided to make sewing my business, I purchased my first, what I thought was my first business machine, and it was a Bernina, which I still have and I still love. But very shortly after, I realized it was not an industrial machine. And if I was going to be doing pillows and draperies and all the things that I was planning on doing, it was not going to be enough. Now, it has served me well in other parts of my business. And my very first business was actually making custom bridal headpieces. And I did a lot of that work by hand, but what I didn't do by hand, I used that Bernina for. So, and I had known Debbie for quite, well, we've been in our home for 30 years. So I probably knew Debbie that long, and it's one of the very few fabric stores that's in our area. There was another one in a town close to the two of us, but so I got to know Debbie well, and then found out that she was retiring, and I was more than thrilled to find out that she was not closing the business, that she had sold it to you. So when she told me that you had worked there for a while, I want to talk to you about that. So how did you start working there and why?
So my grandmother actually, she still works here with me. She had started working here probably about 25 years ago with Debbie and Mike Byrne. And when I grew up, I kind of always grew up in here all the time.
Okay.
But it wasn't until I was a teen that I actually got my first job here.
Okay.
They had hired me to come in and just do the registers and, clean up the machines, oil them, change the needles. That was my job every week for like years, was to clean the machines, clean the sales floor. So that's how I got started here over 16 years ago.
Okay. And did your grandmother teach you to sew?
She did. So she's the one that really was a pillar in the foundation of me wanting to sew and even having this business, really. She taught me how to sew at a young age, and I used to go there all the time, every weekend, and we used to sew. She's more of a quilter. I'm more based now after my journey in my career, but she's the one that taught me how to sew and kind of what started it all. Okay.
What is the focus of the business of Byrne's? Like if someone were to say to you, what kind of store is it? How would you describe it?
I think that's a layered question. I think we've evolved over the last, 40 years in business, and so the dreams of Byrne Sewing have evolved over those decades, but it really is not just a sewing machine shop or just a quilt shop. We want to be like a hub for people to come and create, make friends, share ideas, and learn what really cool things are out there in the sewing world and what they can actually create with their own two hands. So it's a mixing pot, I think, of things between just really loving sewing machines. It's my main passion, but having it where people can come in here all the time and this is their place. Like this is their home,
Right.
creative, and see the people they love and just have a good time.
You host a lot of events there, and it's funny. One of the questions I often ask, and I will pose to you in a few minutes, do you ever sew for pleasure? Do you ever, because once you make sewing your business, it's a little challenging, and add in two small children, it gets even more. But what I have found to be fascinating is that I've never really been a quilter. I think I've made 2 quilts my entire life. But I have found so many events when I had time to sew for myself. I went out of my way to make sure I could go to events at Byrne's because of the same reason. You found other people who loved what you loved. And I never thought of it as a quilt shop. I always thought of it as a fabric store and a sewing machine store.
Yeah.
And
that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. And that's, even when I have been looking for fabric that isn't, I mean, I'm not buying for quilts. I actually recently was in there and bought fabric for some baby gifts and was just like so excited to find so many great fabric patterns as well as the quality of the fabric. But it's every time I get the newsletter or saw about an event, it really kind of tore me up the last couple of years because I just did not have time for that. And I'm trying to make more time for it right now. So, but I can see, I mean, you've dedicated a fair amount of space of your building to these events. Yes, you have things hanging on the wall that are for sale, but you've got floor space that's dedicated to people being able to come in and learn and talk with each other and have classes. So that's a commitment.
For sure. It's a commitment to really us wanting people to come in. And so it's only half the journey is having a great machine and the materials and the right tools. If you don't know how to use any of them and you don't enjoy doing it, then you're not going to want to sew and you're not going to want to come in here and pick out the beautiful fabrics and make new friends if you're not enjoying it. So really that is a big part of our business here is yes, eventing. I'm a person that loves to throw events. I love to throw parties, and you will see it if you ever check our social media or our Facebook. But we often throw big, huge parties and events here because I think that ties in the fun that people have with sewing is knowing that it can be pleasure and actually functional.
Yes. And I think the other thing too, Jess, is depending on the kind of sewing that you're doing, I don't know about you, but I've encountered people, well, will you sew? You can do this. Well, no, I've never done that before. So to be able to go to a location and be with other people who sew many different kinds of things, it's a great learning experience, and it's a great way to connect with people who do what you do. And I know you have people who work there who don't just sell things. Everyone that I've met there sews. Am I correct about that?
They do. A majority, I think I have a few staff members that don't sew,
Okay.
But a majority, some of them do. And that's kind of how they found their journey in here. Most of my employees, this is like their retirement career or like their fun job, because we try to make this a really fun place to be, nonetheless work. So yeah, I do have some people that don't sew. I don't even sew that much myself, to answer your question. I don't have time, truthfully, to sew that much anymore. And I really dedicate a lot of my time and efforts here to running the business and making it, thrive for all of our amazing customers that come in here. But I just got so burnt out while I sewed. So I was a bridal and a prom dress seamstress for a couple years. That put me through college part of the way. And then after I got out of college, I did it until I got married, and it burnt you out. You're exactly right when you say that when you do it as a career, it takes the joy out of it. I think for most people, not everybody, but it definitely did, to the point of actually making this stuff or making my projects. I just didn't find any joy in it. If it doesn't have any joy, it doesn't dedicate any time in my life to it. It doesn't deserve any time in my day. But I really love sewing in a way that I care about how the machines work, what my customers make. I like to be surrounded by fabric, but I don't necessarily have the time or the joy of actually doing it myself. But I'm creating a space that other people can find that joy. So
I love that, because I feel like I've heard the term, the season of your life, and young children and running a business are not conducive to having lots of extra spare time. I think the one time that I was in there, I think it was just like days before you had your second child. And I just kept thinking, like, what a stressful situation I would find that to be. And you weren't sitting around doing nothing. You had a toddler running around. You were giving someone directions on how to take care of something. And the next thing I knew, you were announcing on social media you had your second baby. I'm like, well, she made that look easy.
Yeah, we're always keeping it busy here. I enjoy the chaos. I enjoy being busy. So it just comes second nature.
It's good that you enjoy the chaos, because I think it doesn't feel chaotic when I'm in the store, but life with two small children and a business could be very chaotic. So let me ask you a question. The decision to purchase the business. I know Debbie and her husband were talking about retiring, but as someone who owns a business, you have to start thinking ahead of time. You don't just wake up one day and go, okay, I'm retiring. And knowing that you're handing it over to someone who's going to take care of it is another whole story. So talk us through how that happened with Debbie and her husband.
So it was definitely, like you said, a plan to purchase a business is a long process. It's not, I think for a lot of people, especially a small business, it's not like a today and tomorrow kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's done. So I think it took them a long time to really find the right person to purchase their business. And so after I graduated from college, I got my job back here as a salesperson. It's really what I found the most joy in here, was really pairing people with the right machines. It's actually still to this point what I find the most joy in here. Okay. Out of all of my hats that I wear. But with that, I came back. I was promoted to their manager here, and then COVID hit. And at the time of COVID, probably about a year before COVID, we had talked about just kind of the future of the business. We were actually out at VDTA. It's a sewing conference out in Vegas. And we were sitting there in a Starbucks, and we were just kind of talking and planning for the future and trying to figure out like what we could do to keep this business going well. Mm-hmm. And I kind of asked her, I was like, Debbie, what's your 5-year plan? And, we've been working so closely for so many years. Right. And without a skip of the beat, she answered, and she was like, my 5-year plan is for you to purchase this business. And I was like, and I knew it in my heart that that's where I wanted to go in my life, but it wasn't anything that I had expected to come out of her mouth. Okay. And I kind of like took a big gulp of my latte and just was like, wow, okay, let me think about this. Like,
let me process.
Yep. I had just gotten married. So I was like, wow, this is a lot. I was only 24 at the time, or 23 at the time when she had said it. And I was like, wow, I have a hard time deciding what pizza I want. Nonetheless, buying a whole business, I was like, this is a lot, but I knew I could do it. And I was like, I just have to move on from that big jump that I'm taking in my life and big risk that I'm taking at, this young age to buy this business. So after many conversations with my really supportive husband, we had decided to move forward and for me to purchase the company. And so COVID kind of put fuel to the fire on that one, because yes, I did a lot of things in the day-to-day aspect of this company. But when COVID came along, Debbie had, medical things that she couldn't be here in the store. Some problems with with COVID, it would have really made her ill. So she couldn't come into the store. Okay. So her and her husband kind of retreated out of the store for a long time. They were very much still involved remotely, but I didn't see them here in the store. Okay. So it was kind of crazy. I had Caroline on March 14th, my first child, and then the world shut down the next day. Yes. And it was probably, outside of having a child, the most scary conversation I've ever had with someone is to say, I don't know what's happening to this company. Like, I don't know where the future of this company lies. And I think for somebody that even had a company for 40 years, I think it was the scariest thing. She had texted me and she was like, I'm still laying in the hospital at the time. She was like, I've never seen this in all of my years in this company. And she had been involved even before that with her father's company, since she was a child. And so she's been around. She's like, I've never seen something like this. And I'm afraid for the future of this company, because nobody knew what the world was going to be. If you own a brick and mortar store with no online presence, how are you going to survive? Right. So we kind of jumped full throttle back into it. We made a website for the company, and the week after I had Caroline, I was back working again. And I just knew that if I wasn't involved, I wouldn't have a company to take over. And I knew that we owed it to our customers to give them all of that so that they still had a place to come to. So that kind of fueled it. And I basically took over anything that I hadn't already been doing during that time period over the entire span of COVID. And not that long after, in the end of 2021, I purchased the business and took ownership over it. And so it was a really easy transition, I'd say, because I was so heavily involved in it prior to buying it, just because of the situation of the world, that we were able to easily transition into me owning it. But yeah, that was a very whirlwind of a story there. But
no, that I
know how I came to be at Byrne Sewing.
I knew some of it, but I didn't know all of it. And I knew when I spoke to Debbie at one point while she was still pretty active with the business, one of the words she used was trust. And she said, you had done so much with and for the company already. And this was before COVID. So I knew that she had a sense of relief that things weren't going to fall apart. Now, I know that sense of relief was not there when everything was shut down, but it's interesting to me that you used the problem of COVID and created an opportunity by putting the website together. Did you do any online sales during that time? How did you handle income during the shutdown?
So that was a very interesting time. And I think out of all the really terrible things that came out of COVID, I always say that the sewing world benefited from it.
Absolutely.
It resurged the industry. And I'm sure, you being in it, you see it as well. And so we kind of pivoted and we're like, we have no online presence. If we're going to sell everything in here and nobody can come in the door, how are we going to do it?
Right.
At the time, we didn't have an online presence. So we put together a website and we were generating a lot of sales through that. And then we started doing weekly shopping parties, just like a lot of places have done. But I think it became really popular in the sewing and the quilting world. And we used to do them once a week and we would get hundreds and hundreds of orders. And that's just for the fabric. But people used to call because you had to make masks. How do you make masks? You need a sewing machine to make a mask. So we were like the solution to the problem, some of the problem. And so we had the fabric, we had the elastic, and we had the sewing machines and the thread. So we had all the boxes to check here for people. But it became a point of supply chain issue, and we had the fabric on the wall, but we couldn't get the machines. And so people would just be calling in to buy the machines. And a lot of companies took their policies away that you could sell machines, like that you couldn't sell machines online, because a lot of companies have that, or you can't sell them for a certain price. They really took a lot of it back and really worked with a lot of small businesses, knowing if they didn't support them in this tough time and let them make the money how they even possibly could in any way, there were small businesses left to keep on, going with their own company. So that really kind of fueled it. But we used to have people calling in all the time looking for machines. And we just used to have to start leaving messages on the phone that were like, if you want any sewing machine under $5,000, we're completely sold out. And it was a continuous thing for like 2 years. It was insane, the amount of supplies that people needed.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see, because we also used to collect masks here for people. The amount of people that were learning to sew to help other people in a time where that's all they could do. Or people that, were just lonely, like they lived at home by themselves. And the only people they would see is our face on these live streams. When someone said that to me one time, I kind of sat back and I was perplexed by it. I just didn't understand at the time that we were doing these. We were doing these to stay in business, stay open, keep the business going and the community going. But we didn't realize that we were actually that important at the time to people for mental sake. And they're like, we watch you every week. And it really kept us sane. And you're like the only person I had to talk to all week. And it just was like kind of crushing to the soul. But also you're like, wow, I can't believe that we could do that for you.
That's the need you were filling. Yes.
I had no idea. So it was a really interesting, terrible, frightening time knowing that I was about to purchase this business and we're looking at a global pandemic and wondering what's going to come out of it.
Right. And bringing a baby into the world at the same time.
Yeah, that was a little spicy. Don't suggest it for anybody. Don't freak out on that.
Do not recommend.
Don't recommend it. But it was fun, and it's all part of the story here to how we are Byrne Sewing today because of it.
Yes. Did you have any thoughts of changing the name?
Never. It was never a thought to ever change it. So, and I think that, paid tribute to Debbie Byrne and Mike Byrne and their decades of dedication to this company and really making it a household name. If I was to change the name, I'd change part of the identity of this business. And so I had so many people ask me that when I bought the store, why didn't you change it?
Yeah.
Because it's not Byrne Sewing anymore. Then if I change it and try to act like this store is still what it is, but under a new name. So I took full ownership of it, and I've always kept it Byrne Sewing, and I think it's served me well. And I think it's easy for people to connect the two together, even though there's a new owner.
Right.
They know it's still the same name. It's still the same feeling when they walk in the door. So I never change it, and I never will.
Okay. I was curious about that. One of my brothers bought a business from someone, and not unlike you, he started working with him while he was in high school. It's an automobile repair shop. And he eventually bought the business from his boss. And someone said something to him, oh, are you going to change the name? And he said exactly what you did. No, it would change what this place is. Everyone knows this place and they have confidence and trust in it. Why would I change that? And I think it's a tribute to the dedication that Mike and Debbie put into their business and what people, as you said, expect when they walk in the door. And a lot of your employees did not change. They were still the same people, same faces that I recognized when I walked in the door. I know some people retired, but that was just going to happen anyway. That didn't have anything to do with you purchasing it. Jess, I have interviewed a lot of people in the soft furnishings and window treatment industry. And lately we've noticed some newer, younger faces coming into the industry. And I do want to talk to you about that. But for the very first time, when I asked someone how they learned to sew, the answer was YouTube. And I was totally taken. She learned during COVID. And now she has a business. Yeah. And I found that fascinating. And it's one of those, none of us recommend going through that again. However, some of the fallout has not been negative. And I'm curious, yes, when you walk into Byrne's, some of the faces who are working there are mine and older. So, but are you finding that the people who come in and shop are any younger than they were before? What's your experience there?
Yes, I think that we have acquired a new customer base in a lot of ways, but still maintained the one that we already had. But I think a lot of people are kind of jumping onto this repurposing, upcycling, seeing the way that they can be their own boss and be an entrepreneur. And people are oftentimes coming and getting embroidery machines and starting up their business. And they're no older than me most of the time. And so we're starting to get a pretty large customer base of younger clients here. And it's really exciting to know the industry's not dying. It's only growing. And so oftentimes when I tell people that I was buying a sewing machine dealership, they would kind of look at me cross-eyed and say, who knows how to sew anymore? Who sews? And I was like, well, apparently I do. So it's really an industry that's kind of coming back full throttle. And I think it depends on who's looking at it, their opinion on it. But I think very much a lot of younger people are getting back into sewing. And yeah, YouTube has become their main teacher. I mean, I went to formal education and I got a degree in fashion design. And I know people that's so amazing and they never went to school for it. They just learned off of books and videos and just people they knew. And it's pretty amazing to see the talent that somebody can learn off of YouTube.
Yes. In my part of the industry, there is a conference every year called the Custom Workroom Conference. And the two producers are a husband and wife, Susan Woodcock and Roger Walker. And Susan has said that when she stands at the conference and looks out over the vendor floor, she's looking at people who earn a living by making things with their hands. And that is just amazing to me. And when I go into a store like yours, the creativity and the different kinds of things, it's not a quilting store. People are making lots of different things. And you have classes for bags and so many different things that it just is so exciting to me to see that there are younger people that are sparking interest. And you said upcycling and changing things and working with what you already have and making it something new. I think the possibilities are endless, but it's not necessarily easy to manage that from your perspective.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So based on the fact that you were making this decision and getting ready to buy this and having a baby, have you ever thought about quitting?
No, it was never an option. Just never an option. Yes, there's things in this business that get difficult, especially owning a brick and mortar store in, this day and age, but it was never an option. I worked so hard to get to this point. I would have never thought to turn back and go the other direction. I really do love my life and my job and my career. I think it's something pretty cool when people often tell me when they walk in here, I just envy you. You have the coolest job I've ever seen. And I kind of think that sometimes. I think, oh, well, I guess I really do. And I do love my business. So there's no intention of quitting anytime soon.
Okay. If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
I would say my love of parties and eventing. I'd probably be an event planner in my next life. So I kind of blend the two together.
Okay. Perfect.
With Byrne Sewing and our big well-known events.
Okay. So clearly overcoming a global pandemic was a huge challenge, but what would you say are some of the biggest challenges of running a brick and mortar store?
I think part of it is trying to anticipate always, not only what the market wants, but what your customers want. I think that was one of my hardest things to really grasp. And I feel like I know my customers, I know them, but what do they really want? And so I think that is a part of it. And really just being able to juggle so many hats to I say a small business, but we have about 15 employees here and they all run different aspects of this business. So just keeping them all running smoothly and up to our standards is, I'd say, the most complicated thing about running a brick and mortar store.
I want to jump in and take a moment to thank the sponsors who make it possible for me to bring you the podcast each week. My sponsors are people in the industry that I have personally had a connection to, purchased from, or used their services. So it makes it really easy for me to tell you about them and the great things that they have to offer. Because I feel so strongly about education in our industry, I'm thrilled that as the owner of the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library, I can use the resources of the library to help support the podcast. The library hosts the industry's largest curated collection of educational resources for the custom home furnishings professional. Membership to the library gives you access to a wealth of downloadable reference materials, videos, live events, as well as a community of support to help you develop your design, sales, and fabrication skills, and to grow or start a business. Join the library today at csfrl.org. Angels Linings would like to invite you to become part of their family. With reputable lining comes exceptional customer service. Trust them with your linings like I do. You get 2 Tootsie Pops with every bolt of lining you receive. For smiles, satisfaction, and a sugar kick all around, call Angels Linings at 1-800-450-9368. The Workroom Channel is the premier online training provider for professional fabrication skills. Go to theworkroomchannel.com to browse the selection of anytime access courses created by industry experts. Watch detailed demonstration videos, download companion materials, and participate in private course discussion boards with your instructor and classmates from around the world. Start your course path today at theworkroomchannel.com. If you've listened to the podcast, you know how much I've learned from Michelle Williams. And I think most of my guests have mentioned taking at least one of her classes or gotten coaching from her. Her business is Scarlet Thread Consulting. Michelle loves to work with creative business owners to help them understand all aspects of their business and to use their gifts and talents to make it profitable. Michelle is a strategic profitability coach certified in the Profit First methodology, and she can be reached at scarletthreadconsulting.com. I've also mentioned my membership with the WCAA, and I'm now a gold level sponsor, where education, networking, visibility, and industry discounts are just a few of the benefits that are offered to our members. The Window Covering Association of America is the only national nonprofit trade association that's dedicated to the window coverings industry and the dealers, decorators, workrooms, designers, and installers that make up our membership. Join today at WCAA.org. WCAA, where you are never in business alone. I've also been extremely fortunate to be able to work with Merrill Y. Landis Ltd. It's a family-owned and operated custom workroom and product distribution company to the trade with over 70 years of experience. And in addition to their custom work, they offer a wide variety of decorative drapery hardware. They offer stout and flare 21 fabrics. They have Roman shade operating systems and assembly kits. They have motorization and workroom supplies, and they serve both designers and workrooms. And you can check out the MYL Advantage at mylLTD.com. What is your definition of success, Jess?
That is such an interesting question. I think many business owners would say dollar amount is equal to success. But I think success for me is knowing that I have a place that people can come to and enjoy it. And knowing that I've made a difference in this community is really my level of success. And I think I'm there. I think people enjoy coming here, to say humbly, but I think they enjoy coming here and they enjoy the space. And I know it's a place that people call home. And I think to me, that's the biggest success marker. I mean, I've hit a lot of really high awards and achievements in this company over the last 3 years, but I'd say my level of success is that for sure is just becoming a well-known place that everybody loves to come to.
I agree with you. And there is a feeling in your store that when you walk in, it's, you talk about having a brand and things like that. The feeling in your store fits your brand. There's no question about it. And even as someone who will go months and months without going in, I still feel like I belong there. I don't feel like I'm on the outside of anything. But it's fascinating to me. First of all, in the number of people that I've interviewed for the podcast, dollar amount is rarely the definition of success for people. But I truly love when the definition involves what it means to other people. And the idea that you learned so quickly, even before the business was yours, that the impact you had on people was important. And it wasn't just what can I sell them, but it's what can I do for them. Yeah. And I think and especially as an example to 2 young children, what a fabulous way to be living your life. I think that's phenomenal.
Right. It's pretty cool. I enjoy it. We had just had a big sale in here this weekend, our Small Business Saturday sale. And I really kind of wanted to bring the concept of Black Friday and Small Business Saturday back. I feel like it was a dying thing because of the internet. And so I wanted to really drive customers in here to have a good time and kind of bring back the nostalgia of Black Friday. And we did it here. So we ran a sale here, and I walk out the door at 2:00 when it's time to open, and there is a line out the door, down the parking lot, down to the back of the building. And I just looked at my marketing person, Kelly, she's my marketing coordinator. I was like, I think I've made it in this life. I think this is my sign that I'm okay.
Yes.
I cannot believe there's this many people that want to come in here just because they enjoy being here. So it was a very humbling feeling to know that I was able to continue this legacy of this company.
Okay. I do want to talk to you about your marketing. I follow you on social media, and I think you do a phenomenal job. You do a lot of live streams and a lot of, I know what's going on at your store. Even if I can't get there, I know what's going on. And I think that has impressed me, because I won't lie, I have a little FOMO that when I'm not there and I can't get there. And sometimes I'm not there because I don't have time to add any more projects to my list. But I think it's so great. So is that easy for you because you're young? Do you have help with that? How are you doing your social media? Because I think you're doing a phenomenal job with it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it's so funny when we were emailing back and forth about setting up this podcast. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry I hadn't gotten back to you." And you're like, "Oh, it's okay. I already know you were here, and here." Because I long line.
I knew why I hadn't heard back from you. You had been out of the country. You had been to Vegas.
I was like, that would make so much sense how you knew I wasn't in the country. But I think it takes a lot of work to keep up with social media, because you never know where it's going. And because it's such a fast changing thing between platforms and trends and the right type of reels that are going to get the right customers to you. And it's not necessarily about numbers to me. Like, I don't necessarily care about how many followers I have. I care that I have the right followers, like the right people that actually want to see my content, that think this is a cool place. And even if they don't live here, want to be here. So right. I have a marketing coordinator. Her name's Kelly. She's been with us here for over 5 years, and she really understands and reads me like a book on what I want on my social media and our content. Before Kelly, I really struggled to stay constant with our marketing, because again, it's like a juggler. You're always trying to keep one ball up in the air without dropping the other. So right. Marketing definitely came second a lot of times, but I really made it a point to make it like the highest presence that we had in our company. Because if we can be part of your life, even when you're not in here, like you said,
exactly,
it's the best compliment. So Kelly does most of my marketing here. She's the one that sends out all of my emails. She does most of my graphics. I have a huge team here that makes Byrne Sewing what it is, and she is a big part of it. So she is the one to commend there for our social media.
Okay. I know that you were part of this business for a large part of your life, but being in charge and being the owner is very different from being the manager. Is there anything about running the business day to day that surprised you once you took over?
I think the thing that most surprised me, although I was already so deeply rooted in this company, yes, was how involved I make myself in everything. I'm like, okay, I have this department and I have this department, and we've built up this department to run on its own, but I have a hard time letting control go. So I always have to be involved all the time. So I think that was the hardest thing that kind of surprised me, and how many things that we constantly running and how deeply involved I wanted to be in every single one of them, and realizing I kind of have to let control go, like not a lot, just a little bit. Yeah. What I told my husband, Brandon, just a little bit, I'll let control of. Okay. So that was probably the hardest thing, because I've been involved in this business longer than I haven't been. And so it's part of my DNA anymore. So
yeah, it really is.
Day, every day to day.
All right. So I often hear part of what you just said with business owners. Mm-hmm. I'm a perfectionist. I have a hard time letting go. And, you hear the term business isn't personal, it's business. But this is personal. This is your business. It doesn't get any more personal than that. So you have departments, you have people working for you, you have salespeople. what happens when a mistake is made, whether you make it or somebody else makes it?
You definitely have to own up to it 1000%. You always have to make it right. I always tell my customers that no matter what the mistake is or how big it was, we'll always make it right with you, no matter what. We aim to please here. And so we always want it to be a fun place. So when there are mistakes made, you have to be upfront with the person and just kind of let them know, what happened and make amends with them no matter what it is. So yes. I've definitely learned honesty is the best policy here. And we have the best customers. I'm biased, but I know we do. So
you really do.
We do. I can argue that against all the other thousands of quilt shops in America, but I have the best ones. Yeah, that's for sure. Honesty, I think, is the best way to overcome it to any business owner. You just have to look it in the face and deal with the problem.
Okay. Jess, have you done anything in particular to learn more about running a business since you took over? You said you have a degree in fashion design. Were there any business classes in that curriculum? Like, what have you done to prepare yourself for being a business owner, not just working with fabric? And I shouldn't say just, but working with fabric and design.
Yeah. So I didn't actually take any business classes in college. And if I knew my life was going to take me down this route, I probably would have changed it a little bit to benefit me more. So I haven't ever been formally trained in how to run a business. I never went to college for it. I still didn't take any classes after that, but I think you learn from the School of Hard Knocks. You have to do it to learn it, and you learn a lot from other people in this industry. So oftentimes we go to these conferences in the summer and kind of keep up with different people across the country that are kind of in the same boat. And I think that's where you learn the most information. It's not going to be out of a textbook, and it's not going to be in a classroom. Okay. It's sure going to be from other people who've walked down the same road as you and have learned, and that you can talk with and collaborate with on ideas and bounce things back and forth. But I think that's probably my biggest asset, is just talking to other people and being so social.
Yeah.
So I think that's for sure where you learn most of it. I'd say. Okay. Is it? Yeah.
I know that we were joking about, I knew you were out of the country because I saw it on social media. Do you want to tell us about that trip and why you were there?
Yeah, super cool. So I have made a lot of cool achievements and accomplishments over my last 3 years of owning the business. But one of the companies that I carry here, Byrne, I am a top dealer for them in the country. And I kind of made that achievement once I purchased the company. So we're in the top 10 here. And so we were selected. We earned this trip to Switzerland. So Byrne's are made in Switzerland, some of them. And so they just came out with a brand new top of the line Byrne 990, and it's a beautiful machine. So I got to go over to Switzerland on Byrne's behalf and see the new machines being manufactured. And then we just got to go on a European vacation after that as part of the deal. So,
oh, darn.
I know. We had to go. I'm just kidding. It was really nice. So me and my husband went to Europe for 10 days, but part of it really was to see the machines and see how they're manufactured, and the quality that we carry here is so vastly different than anything online. So it was a cool trip. It was a once in a lifetime. Definitely add it to my bucket of cool things that I've done so far in this career.
I also love that you posted a picture of Mike and Debbie Byrne in front of the building 40 years ago. They had the same experience. So I thought that was really just an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, you can definitely see the roots of the company and where it all started. They started as a Byrne only dealer here. We're a multi-line dealer now. We carry 4 different models or brands of machines here. So they started with Byrne back in the 80s. And so they were a very large dealer when they were a monoline dealer with Byrne. And so they won the exact same trip 40 years ago on the same exact one I was on. So it was kind of really cool to see that and know that we're getting back to our roots and the achievements that we're always used to. And it was just a really cool full circle moment to do that. I was able to continue the business in order to be at this point and be selected to be on one of these trips. But yeah, it was so cute. I was looking through all the photos I had of them from the business prior to found that one. I was like, this is perfect. This is so perfect. Yes. I'm going to be there in like all of a month.
That's awesome. Are you a book reader? Have you read any business books? Are there any books that you would recommend?
I'm a podcast person.
Okay.
Yes. For sure podcast. I have no attention span for books. So I tried when I bought the business. I went to like Barnes and Nobles and bought every how-to small business book. They are still untouched.
Okay.
Don't have the attention span to read them. And I try to do that like when I'm on an airplane to look like I really have my life together, but it's not there. So I listen to podcasts because I have a pretty lengthy drive into work every day. So I listen to different business podcasts, rarely sewing podcasts.
Okay.
But there's a couple out there that I really enjoy listening to.
Can you tell me which ones? Because I always, when people recommend them, I always put the names in the show notes. Yeah, and I listen to them.
They're really good, right? So there's one, it's called The Goal Digger.
Yes.
I love that podcast. I've learned a lot from it over the years. And I listen to other ones, but mostly that one is the main one that I listen to. And I gain a lot from it, just hearing other people's marketing strategies and different ways to run the ins and the outs of the business. Because again, I'm not formally trained in how to run a company, but I do. So you kind of just have to take it from all aspects of resources. So that's definitely where I learned. It would be a podcast over a book.
Okay. Do you use much technology in your part of the business?
Yeah,
I mean, machines have a lot of technology to them this day in this day and age.
Yeah, most of our machines themselves are already super high tech, which always shocks people when they come in here. But we do use a lot of technology, anything from our POS system all the way up to the different platforms that we use to be able to manage the company and manage our social media platforms and our marketing flyers. So there's a lot of technology that goes into this that we wouldn't be able to do without.
Okay. When I ask this next question, I'm usually asking fabricators. So we get a lot of scissors and things like that. What 3 business items could you not live without? I'm not expecting the same answer from you as a store owner.
Yeah. Canva.
Okay.
My bookkeeper. And my last one. Oh, I should have thought of my 3 before. It's like a genie in a bottle. You have 3 wishes. What are they? I don't know. I'm definitely Canva and my bookkeeper. And our third one would have to be good snacks.
Good snacks.
But I can't live without here. That's what makes Byrne Sewing run. If you ever wanted to know, good snacks and my bookkeeper.
Okay. The secret's out now.
Darn, I was going to know. They're going to figure me out sooner or later.
Jess, I meant to bring this up earlier. We kind of touched on like quality machines and quality fabric. You and I were talking before we started to record, and we mentioned the J store, and we won't talk about it here on the podcast.
That's good stuff. We don't talk about it.
But here's the thing. The availability of inexpensive fabric and machines, to my mind, as a machine and fabric snob, it's not inexpensive, it's cheap. And to me, that's a problem. And we're in a period of time where people can order things online and have them delivered tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I even see in my community people who have been using some high quality machines or industrial machines that are 100 years old and are going to be 100 years old before they stop working. You know, I'm trying to teach my granddaughter, can anybody recommend a machine? And inevitably the answers that I see are, don't buy a cheap one. They'll get frustrated. They won't. And we very often in the drapery and soft furnishings world, people will say, oh, I have my own fabric. I bought it online. I did this, I did that. And we have to explain to them the difference in ground cloth and the quality. And we're not going to be able to get one single cut of 15 yards and all of those things that make the creators in both parts of our industry so unique and so special. And the ability to make a really beautiful object really does require quality fabric and a good machine. So we know that because we've been doing this for a long time. When you have somebody walk into your store and they see that fabric is not $2 a yard and the machines are not $100 and they aren't prepared for that, how do you educate them? How do you get them to a point? They may still walk out the door without buying a machine because they didn't know they were going to be that expensive and aren't prepared. But how are you able to express to them, this is why?
So we get that often because there's a lot of other more corporate places out there, like the J word, that sells fabric and sells machines, but doesn't necessarily educate on quality or performance. I think that's where part of the problem is. So when they come in and they're like, I need a sewing machine, and you're like, okay, this is our entry level machine. This is going to last you the longest. Like, this is a great machine to get started with. It's say $500. They're like, oh, I was looking for like something under $100. And I'm like, you will spend more money trying to have it repaired than if you invested in the right tools for the job. This machine will last you 20 years versus the 30 days that'll last you, and then you have to try to figure out how to return it back to Amazon because it's not working and you don't have a real person to talk to and you can't figure out how to thread it. So I think sewing really does need a human touch to it. And I think you need somebody that will educate you on how to use it. I think that's something that really helps us is we offer free education on our machines for a lifetime. It's what we've always done since day one of Byrne Sewing, and it's what I continue to do now. And so I think that really helps people to know that even though they're investing more money, they know they're going to get the support and they're going to learn how to use the product. And if anything was to go wrong, they're not calling a 1-800 number. They're calling the number here. They're stopping back in. They know me. They know my name. And so it's a lot easier, I think, for people at that point to then say, okay, I see the value. I understand why that machine wouldn't work for me. And this is going to last me longer. Or I'm going to get frustrated trying to use it. And then I'm going to have to call you anyways. So all those lead back to Byrne Sewing eventually, the shorter route. And so I think that's part of it. And even fabric. And I think everybody has to start somewhere. So I know there is less expensive machines out there and less fabric. And if that's where you start in your journey, that's okay. But eventually you'll evolve. And the sewists who are at that point will need better tools to be able to create better things. So I think that's kind of how we take an approach to it, is really just explaining that they're going to get the best result and have the most amount of fun when they're enjoying what they're doing and not frustrated over why their fabric is running or why the fabric keeps ripping their threads out of it and why their machine won't even stitch. So I think that's a big part, is educating them on ease and why you need to buy certain tools to make your life easier.
And I feel like, you're preaching to the choir here, but in all fairness, when I bought my Bernina, I really was thinking I was going to be using it as a tool in my window treatment business. And I'm sure I never expressed that to Debbie when I went in there to buy it. And again, I'm not even sure how many years old. It's an Aurora 440. So it's old. And I've brought it in for servicing, and I still use it for buttonholes, and I still use it. I don't do a lot of garment sewing, but occasionally I do some. And I did make some baby gifts recently out of some really cute fabric from your store. Yeah. But I used my Bernina for that because my industrial machine is a beast. And while I'm used to the speed at which it sews, it would have chewed up that fabric and spit it out.
And it's kind of cool. Here in the store, I have like a sewing graveyard. When machines can't be repaired anymore, they're too expensive, they kind of go to this little no man's land. And so one day I was like, let's take apart 2 of these machines. So we have a machine that is a dealer quality machine, which is far different than anything you'll find on the internet. Unless it's purchased from a dealer. And we took apart one that came like straight out of Amazon's warehouse, didn't work right out of the box. And I took it apart and they're sitting on my shelf next to each other. And so when people come in and they're like, I have this machine, all sewing machines are the same, aren't they? I'm like, actually, no, they're not. If you go over and look on the shelf, you'll see the amount of parts and technology and metal is inside the machines we carry here. They're a far higher quality. Even if they're maybe $200 more than what you see online, they're still going to be a better quality. And you can see how much dedication goes into making that product be as good as it is versus just something that just came off a production line and just goes right out to the consumer. There's no journey, there's no connection, there's no story that goes with them in learning how to use their machine or learning how to sew. I mean, maybe they're right, but it's unseen. Like, we don't see it. So yeah, it's pretty cool when people see that and they're like, oh, wow, that's what my sewing machine looks like on the inside. I'm like, yeah, all plastic. That's why it's working.
Yeah, that's why it didn't work for very long.
Exactly. And people just don't know what they don't know. So we love to educate people. It's a cool thing to see people come in from, I want to learn how to sew, I don't know how to sew. I have this machine. It doesn't even work, to showing them how to make things. And they leave and they're making quilts and they're making garments and they're making bags. And the look on their face, like, I made this, is the coolest thing you'll ever experience.
I agree. And that there's a whole hashtag made by me. Yeah. And it's just so exciting to me to see people having pride in themselves. And just like in my part of the sewing industry, many of us started out as DIYers, and many of us started with an old sewing machine and upgraded to industrial machines when we could. But you start where you are. Right. And you learn and you improve and you get better. And I think that's just, but I think the education that Byrne's provides is really the game changer. You're not just opening a box and going, oh crap, what do I do now? It's you bring that machine to Byrne's and they teach you how to use it. And I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, we always stand behind everything we sell here, and we want you to love what you do, or there's no point in doing what we do here. If you don't love sewing, you don't love creating, then there's no place for Byrne sewing if that's not the end goal. So I think we really try to make it a point to really stress the education. We're different than a lot of places out there, even other small businesses that do this and are dealers. They don't always necessarily find the value in education. We really do. Debbie Byrne always did and still does. And so that's why we still honor those things. And we still always want to teach you how to use your machines and really get you into loving the hobby. And I think that's what I can stress the most, is to go to your local dealer. If you're not local to me, I understand. I want you to be local to me, and I want you to come see me and be our faraway friends. But if you're not close to me, go see your local dealer. Oftentimes they're your biggest resource. Even if you're not a quilter, they can give you the most amount of help and information out there and really get you put onto the right path with your sewing journey.
Absolutely. Jess, I will put links to your social media pages in the show notes, but I would love for you to give a piece of advice to someone who's thinking about purchasing a store or opening a store. There are people in my industry who have brick and mortar design shops, and they have, fabric for sale in the front and a workroom in the back. There are a lot of different business models. But for someone who's thinking about opening a brick and mortar location, what advice would you have for them?
I think in the year 2024, it's an interesting question to ask, but the main thing is you have to have a passion for what you do. If you don't love it, you'll never make a dollar. And so if you're buying a business to make a buck, you'll never be wealthy, because you won't have the passion to keep the business running. Because when you're in the toughest times, you go back to the reasons why you started your business or why you purchased your business, and you take that and then you use that as fuel to your fire to keep going through the ups and the downs, because everybody will have them. And so if you don't have passion and love for what you really do, you will never be able to battle the highs and the lows as they come in. So you have to have that at the heart of it. But then you also have to have a good common sense. And I think a common sense of the industry you're going into, the area you're in. And I think a lot of things play into it, but really the passion is what will build an empire for you.
Jess, I think that's great advice. I could talk to you all morning, but you have a store to run and you have children to take care of, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. But thank you so much. This has just been absolutely delightful for me.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Like I had mentioned, this is my first podcast, so it was really, very cool. So I was happy to take up a little bit of all of your time here, all the listeners. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure for me to talk with Jess, as someone I've known for a couple years, because her shop is local to me. And as I said, I have not gone in there a lot because I haven't really had time to do that kind of sewing, but it is such a pleasure to be in that store. And I had known Debbie Byrne for quite a long time. So I really was curious about what Jess's journey was like in buying the store. It was really a pleasure to talk with Jess and find out about her journey and her decision to buy the store, especially in such a tumultuous time. Not only was it a global pandemic, but she had a brand new baby. So it was really fascinating for me to learn about it. I really hope that you enjoyed hearing from Jess today. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.